Hello there, my name is Emily. I studied abroad in Paris last semester, and in this video I wanted to show you guys what an average week in my life was like during that semester. So, if you want to see that, then keep watching. Every day starts pretty similar. First, I look outside to remind myself that I'm alive and this is real. And then I go, get ready, brush my teeth, do my skincare, have breakfast, all of that, and then I'm ready to go for the day. Today, my first class is at l'Institut Catholique, and we'll be going to a travaux dirigés for Histoire Contemporaine. It's basically the same thing as a discussion section at an American university, and everyone here had to give presentations for this except me, because I was an auditor. But this was fair in my opinion, because following along and taking notes to people's speeches at the regular pace of spoken French was already making me want to cry. After class, I grabbed lunch at a banh mi place nearby.
Je prends un banh mi poulet, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Oui. Ah non, merci. Ça sera tout. I rarely have time to eat, and I have an hour in between classes, but it takes half an hour to commute in between the places, and so I'm always on a time crunch, and that kind of sucks, but it's okay.
After 40 minutes, I end up in the Accent Center, which, unlike l'Institut Catholique, which is a French institution, is an American institution. And here you have a lot of study abroad students from various American universities. And on this day, I was here for the class Société, Politique et Médias dans la France Contemporaine, which is 3 hours long and kind of not my favorite class, but it's okay, because right after, I go to my favorite place in Paris, which goes by the name of Arcos Nation. Just kidding, but I'm kind of not. And it's not just because I love climbing, which I do love climbing, but this was also one of the best ways for me to practice conversation, and incidentally, one of my biggest goals while studying abroad was to get better at communicating in French. The climbing gym turned out to be a really good place to practice because, on one hand, people are just more open to conversating because that's just climber culture. It also helped a lot that I made a friend who I would regularly climb with.
Alors, dis-moi, t'es qui?
Moi, je m'appelle Adrien et j'aime bien danser.
Allez.
T'as mes dos qu'on fait où?
Non, c'est pas ça le problème. Allez. Allez, let's go, comme disent les Français. Ouais, tu l'as. T'es fier de toi?
Ça va la souplesse? Oh, ok. Bravo.
After getting back from climbing, I had dinner with my host family and ended my day working on homework. Here I was working on a diaporama, or a slide deck for my literature class, because, unlike my history professor, the literature professor was not about to let us off the hook. At least, not this hook. As American study abroad students, we didn't have to do any of the final exams or oral presentations that the French students had to. I think I would have perished a little inside if we had to also, give a spontaneous oral presentation on a topic that I didn't understand while I was being covered in class. So you know what? Realistically, as much as I complained, I had it pretty easy. So Tuesdays are usually the longest days in my schedule. My history lecture only meets every other week, so on the weeks that I do have it, it's a 2-hour lecture in which the professor has no slides, writes nothing down, and speaks so fast I want to cry every time. But you know what? It's been really good for my listening comprehension, and if it wasn't for this class, I wouldn't have met Pauline et Justine.
Salut! Sont mes camarades de classe, Justine et Pauline.
On Tuesdays, I have even less time to commute in between classes, and so lunch comes very quickly from Monoprix. And I don't know, this is just a very normal selection of things that I get from Monoprix, but you know, someday I'm gonna look back on this and be like, oh, this is super interesting. That's what I ate when I went to school. So after I'm done chowing down on that, actually sometimes while I'm chowing down on that, I'll have cinema class, which is my favorite class, albeit kind of a weird one at times. And then me and my 2 other classmates commute 40 minutes back to La Cato. So here we are in literature class, which I will say is easier to follow along than the history one, but I forgot that I'm dog water at literature, so I don't know why I registered for this class, but nonetheless, it was still a really valuable experience just to be immersed in a classroom environment. And on the way home, I really wanted to highlight the busyness of the city. Like, there's always a lot going on, especially at rush hour when everyone's commuting, and the chaos was kind of overwhelming at first, but, you know, it becomes part of the Parisian charm, I suppose. It's kind of fun too. I mean, look at this guy running. And I think that's super interesting because American media likes to romanticize Paris as this place where people just take life really leisurely. But in reality, I've found that Parisians live life a lot more like New Yorkers in that life here does move pretty fast. It's not to say that people here don't actually know how to take their time. It just feels more like a skill that they have in their back pocket rather than something that they're doing 24/7. In that spirit, here's me working hard on my presentation. And after working on this for a couple hours and having dinner with my host family, that was pretty much the end of my day. On Wednesdays, I don't have a morning class, so I usually start off by studying in a cafe. But before we do that, there's something else we've got to do first.
Prendre matcha latte chaud avec des d'avoine.
Matcha latte, lait d'avoine, c'est sur place ou emporté?
Ah, sur place.
5,56. Voilà, madame, je laisse vous installer.
So yeah, the thing about really living in a foreign country and learning its language is that everyday interactions are a whole new journey. Despite having what I believe to be a relatively good grasp on the language, every time I speak it, it's kind of like a shot of adrenaline because I'm also hyper aware that I have an accent. I might not be saying things like how locals do, and, you know, I've got to be prepared for whatever they're going to respond with too. You know, those anxieties are just the reality of living abroad and speaking in a language that you're not totally comfortable in. And I will say, it's gotten easier with time, but to help hopefully someone along, there's 2 things that really helped me out. Number 1 is to convince yourself that you're an adrenaline junkie and that you like the thrill. And number 2 is to realize that if you are an English speaker, which I assume most of my viewers are, like, we literally have it so easy. Because even if you mess up, there's a really good chance that the other person speaks English. And even if that doesn't work, we have a whole load of apps that translate. So that being said, I feel like it's pretty safe to at least try. And I feel like locals really appreciate it when you do, even if you make mistakes. Returning back to the series of events, in the afternoon I just have cinema class, so here's me battling the crowds to get to my metro stop because I happened to live in the 8th district, which is very, very lively and has lots of people walking around at all times. And then after my cinema class, which I forgot to film that day, I felt pretty burnt out, so I kind of just walked around with my friend Kylie and did some window shopping. I capped off the day with some work, and that was pretty much it. So today's gonna be a really fun day because I'm meeting up with my friend Nikki and we're gonna go see Les Invalides. My host family was like, that's not really the most exciting place, but I figured I should go see it just because I'm here. The Thursdays are always fun because I don't have any classes, so it's my designated day to find something fun to do around Paris. In the beginning of my semester in Paris, I made a huge mistake, and that was not going out and exploring Paris enough. And you know, it seems so basic, like, girl, you're literally there to do just that. And so toward the end of the semester, I really started making a lot more effort to go out and see Paris, and oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I did. Girl, we definitely enlisted children at some point. So of course, for some balance, I usually schedule out some time to study and work on assignments during the rest of the day. And this week was more exciting than most because I went to the BPI, the Bibliothèque Publique d'Information, au Centre Pompidou, which is one of my favorite buildings in Paris and one of the coolest museums I've ever been to. I was here to find sources for a paper on immigration because my professor basically said that we needed to do that, or at least that it would be a really good learning experience. And you know, at first I was kind of not enthused that I'd have to spend an extra like 20 minutes each way on the metro. But you know what? I was pretty happy to have visited, and for a variety of reasons. I mean, look how excited I am over this book about exotic birds. Like, the zoology section completely derailed me. And honestly, I was just so jealous that I wasn't studying biology in French and that I had to write about serious things, I guess. But, you know, it's chill. A little bit later, I found a really nice librarian and they helped me find my books. And then I was too nervous to film because there's a bunch of people sitting around there. So that's all the footage I have from the library, unfortunately. Up next, we have one of the best and worst parts of Paris, the metro.
Some dude also tried to hit on me when I was here once. If we see him again, I'll definitely ask him to be in the vlog. Oh, Jesus. Okay.
We're going to bed early today because tomorrow we're going to Annecy. You know, that's not something I do every single week, so you could argue it's not a very typical thing for me to do in this typical week in my life vlog. A typical part of my weeks has been incorporating adventure, so I'm gonna argue that this deserves to be part of it.
Good morning. It's 6:02 a.m. and I think I just passed people who have been out since last night at a bar. So.
Saw the stars, they aren't shining quite as bright like years apart. Take your love, take my life, fight it up, you pass me by. I just wish that you'd have seen me a little better than I was. Smoking mirrors separated, yeah, they told me you'd never fall. There's
discovered a Parisian monopoly, French monopoly, Gare du Nord. Is there a Gare du Nord? Ah, that's what we left from this morning. Cease.
No.
And then if you
You're getting so many good things. I swear you're breaking this game.
Tu veux les acheter?
Bah oui, pourquoi pas.
I'm gonna go get your other orange one. No, I'm gonna go get ya.
If I don't buy this, actually.
Okay, alright.
You leave my orange one alone.
No promises. Ah! It's fine. I'm coming for you. And do 12 can't sing. What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay, take your $8 and this time I do want my change.
The next day, Kristen and I went to hike Moreira, and let's just say this was one of the more memorable hikes I've had. Allons-y, allons-y.
Allons-y.
Sometimes I like to hike up mountains just to see how crazy small we are. In this world. So how the fuck are you still bitching about your problems? Can you fall apart? Baby girl. The liquid out your eyes rolls right down to the source of your life.
I feel like my camera doesn't really show depth, but like that is pretty steep. Like it just went from like all those trees that like are deciduous to like nothing and evergreen, and like the ground is like so clear all of a sudden. What were the stats that you just said? We have like 0.7 miles to go and 600 feet of elevation? Okay. And it started raining, so. But we're too invested.
I'm looking.
I'm invested too. Oh gosh.
Really? That's what I was gonna say. So
We made it. Yay. We're so close to the edge, and it's like such a sheer drop there.
it is a very sheer drop.
We need more context.
Yeah, I think it's cute. So at my going away party actually, my very good friend Hardy, met my new roommate Sophia.
It ended up getting dark really quickly, and we did not plan super well for sunset. So rather than attempting the steep and slippery last mile to the bus stop, we ended up hitchhiking, which I know is kind of crazy, but we were kind of desperate, so to my poor mother, I am so sorry. But don't worry, it wasn't as sketchy as it could have been because it was with this couple that we'd seen on the hiking trail at least, and they seemed nice. And you know what? Fortunately, they were just as nice as we'd hoped, so I have lived to tell the tale. After they dropped us off near the train station, we checked out a nearby Marché de Noël.
Nice. He's me, but better.
And then we hopped on a train, and that was it for our time in Annecy. Coming back home was always a little bit of an adjustment. On Sundays, I would usually have to finish a lot of homework because Mondays and Tuesdays and even Wednesdays are pretty hectic, and then by Thursday I'm kind of burnt out, and then Friday, Saturday, and maybe Sunday itself I might be traveling. Needless to say, it didn't really help the post-traveling blues. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like this class that I'm taking. Well, I don't really like a good number of the classes that I'm taking. Well, I like one of them. There weren't many options. I'm just stuck in classes that I don't really care about, and that's the worst feeling. Every week when I have to do my homework, I just tell myself the fastest way out is through. To be fair, I'm probably coming down from being in Annecy and traveling and like experiencing all of that cool stuff, and now I'm just back to my everyday, which I'm not so enthused about, and so that contrast just makes it worse. It sort of feels like I ended on a downer, and you know what? That's kind of realistic for how every week went. It was just this ebb and flow of emotions, from all these everyday frustrations with getting around to communicating, to feeling like I was on top of the world when I got into all these adventures and made all these chance connections. So if you ask me how my study abroad experience was, it's impossible to evaluate whether it was bad or good, but it was definitely something different.
J'aime bien danser.
Alors pourquoi on est ici?
Je sais pas, on est perdu.
Et
C'est pas qu'on de danse?
Grimper sur les murs, peut-être.
Ouais.
Est-ce que tu as quelque chose à dire à l'internet?
Ça t'embêterait si je dis non?
Ok.
bah non.
Quoi? Vous voulez dire quelque chose?
Bah écoute, reviens quand tu vas à Paris déjà.
Ok.
Parce que tu pars déjà dans pas longtemps, donc en vrai, reviens quand tu veux. On est une super ville, on est super gentils, il faut pas... C'est des gens bien.
Un peu poli.
Faut pas écouter les réputations de la ville.
J'ai entendu. Merci.